Hi there! The script table reads for House of the Dragon Season 3 began last week, and various cast members are posting photos of their name cards from it to Instagram. But one of them slightly overshared, the Corliss actor, because he included an image of the full cover page for one of the scripts, which actually includes a cast listing, including several new characters for Season 3, who are now confirmed by this leak. So let's dive into it. Now first off, I hope Mr. Toussaint doesn't get in much trouble for this. It isn't a mega spoiler, but there is information we can get from it, and major news sites separate from me are already covering it. It's already out there in the information sphere, so might as well report on it and give my analysis. Because you can actually glean a lot from a cast listing if you know what to look for. So I've decided to not make one short video, but actually a trilogy of videos on the three broad topics that we can glean from it. Now, first and most obvious are in print the names of new characters now confirmed for Season 3. That's what this video is. Starting with that because it's obvious. The second one that follows this, a little more speculative, that's why I'm separating it, because the cast listing isn't just, alphabetical or by broad categories of the top 20 or always the starring and then other groups. The cast listing on scripts is very specifically the pay grade ranking. And by comparing that to prior seasons, which we have because we have the scripts for those, and seeing who went up and who went down, there's 2 or 3 characters who drastically increased in prominence. So I'll go over that we can kind of tell from that these storylines will be increasing. Third and most speculative, so I'm putting it in a separate video, is my tentative season outline. This is only because I was already making a video about this that has a snapshot of our current mental state after what Ryan Condal said if we're going to cover up to 4 major events from the book. I said, okay, before we get spy photos, this is what I think they're doing as just a placeholder outline to be updated throughout filming season, you see. And we already have reason to update it because we have this script here. You see, they don't list characters who don't appear in an episode. Notice that Aemond isn't in this. Doesn't mean Aemond is dead, just he's not in that episode. That they skip over the number he is. So, certain events that I thought were going to be in the 4th episode, I've now realized won't be or can't be. Doesn't mean they don't exist, just they're either in episode 3 or episode 5. So you see the ripple effects of that, of this would move around all the other events in my tentative outline of what do I think is happening in which episode. But that's an ongoing process of refinement with other spy photos and casting news of what happens in which episode. Now, as I've said before, the reason I devoted so much time to analyzing what every director is for Season 3 is because when you know the director list and you know what episodes they're doing, Claire Kilner openly said, I'm doing episodes 2 and 5 before filming began, puts the spy photos in context. We know it was their filming unit. We can figure out what episodes it was. With that preamble out of the way, spoiler warnings in advance. I'm talking about new characters, upcoming storylines, character deaths, full spoilers here. But to dive right into the juicy stuff, Daeron Targaryen in print. Alicent's youngest son who will appear in Season 3. And I know we already knew he was going to be in Season 3, and this does not tell us who's playing him because this is a list of the characters in the script. Doesn't list actors with them, unfortunately. But it just makes it feel so official, and that he's relatively high on the list. Pay attention to that, and we'll go over the rankings more in the next video, but this is pretty high, higher than I thought he would be. There was a time when we thought he'd be cut entirely. And on top of that, another one that we already just heard about 2 or 3 weeks ago was Ormund Hightower, who's the second main character to Daeron in Daeron's storyline. That Ormund Hightower is the current Lord of Hightower and Lord of Old Town and commands the main Hightower army, which is the largest land army in all of Westeros in the war. You briefly see it in that montage in the season finale where you see the blue dragon, that's Targaryen Daeron's dragon, flying over with them. So I already made a whole separate casting video about this because they publicly announced it, that Ormund has been cast, and they cast a relatively prominent actor, James Norton, to play him. So we got good impression that they're actually devoting a significant amount of time and attention to this Reach storyline, which for a while we thought might be cut entirely or just sidetracked for all of 2 minutes devoted to it. No, they're really devoting time and energy to this, so it's nice to see Daeron in print. We already knew Ormund's casting, but notice how relatively high in the ranking Daeron and Ormund are for that Reach storyline that Daeron is in. Even though we knew that already, this isn't new stuff other than generally this ranks kind of high. As for the new characters, they fall into two broad categories. First, because I was already talking about Daeron, there's some other associated characters in Daeron's storyline. And then there's other characters in Rhaenyra's storyline. They're not quite as related to each other, but the broad theme is they're mostly guard characters, but named guards and garrison commanders, and they're relatively important characters, and there's 4 of those. But like I said, because we were just talking about Daeron, to dive into that, the new characters for his storyline, not the only ones, just the ones in this script, are Bold Jon Roxton, Lord Footly, and Sharis Footly. They will appear in Season 3. Jon Roxton is a prominent knight in Ormond Hightower's army who does play a major role in the story. Bold is the polite sobriquet, that it's sort of like if Black Walder Frey from the book was called Bold Walder Frey to his face, to not incur his wrath. Jon Roxton is not a good person. He has a foul temper. He abuses women. He is not an honorable man at all. But he is very dangerous. He's one of their best warriors. And he carries a Valyrian steel sword named Orphan Maker. Directly tied in with that are the Lord and Lady of House Footly being the rulers of Tumbleton, which is where the big battle that we think is going to be the season finale will take place, the Battle of Tumbleton. He was only called Lord Footly in the book. The show gave him a first name, which is fine. I like it when they give names to people. They've given him the first name Glendon. And his wife, Sharis Footly, she goes on to do other things, yes. So basically, when the Hightower army eventually advances to Tumbleton in the Northern Reach, Jon Roxton personally attacks the Footleys. So this is part of the Daeron in the Reach subplot, and I'm actually kind of surprised that they cast someone so specific as Bold Jon Roxton. They could have easily left him out of this, that for a time we thought they'd cut this, or it would have all of 2 named characters, Daeron and Ormund, and then they could just be pointing at unnamed groups of stuntmen and saying, oh no, that's commanded by Alan Tarley, that when they're bothering to include these as names in the script and assign it to a cast member, I mean, it's not going to be something on the scale of maybe even Gwaine Hightower in Season 2 or Oscar Tully, but they're taking it seriously and treating them as distinct individuals. That we're not really sure, but we thought this would be drastically condensed to see not just Ormond, but Bold Jon Roxton, that this is getting very specific. Even though, they sack Tumbleton, so the Footleys are getting hurt in this, but they're including quite a bit of this. But it's nice that they're including increasingly more characters in the Daeron and the Reach storyline, more than we thought we'd get. I'm still kind of looking forward to, a general audience would kind of want a Tarly character, and I think we will get that. It's just, I think the Battle of the Honey Wine happens earlier than Episode 4, so logically we wouldn't see any of the Tarly, Caswell, or Rowan characters from that. They're probably not in this. That's why I talk about this more in the third video I'm going to make of, what happens by specifically Episode 4. But we're going to get a decent number of characters from the Reach storyline, and the more we hear, the better it sounds. I mean, in contrast, remember how excited we were at first for Season 2 when they cast Kragan Stark? And then gradually realized they're not casting other named people from the North like vassals. that Jace might be visiting if they really wanted to expand on that, secondary characters from the North. And it was nice for what we saw for a big 5-minute scene, and I understand originally they're going to have Kragan do more in episodes 8 through 10, and then they got cut, and we know they filmed that. Whatever the case, when we realize they're not casting these secondary characters, they're not appearing as much, versus when you're getting casting leaks for Daemon in the Riverlands, we knew there's going to be quite a bit of time here. They're casting the Darries and the Mootons and various other characters, which was nice for showing there's more than just one house. It's a whole kingdom. The North is more than the Starks, the Riverlands are more than the Tullys, the Reach is more than the Tyrells, so seeing them expand out the Reach storyline like this, I'm not trying to promise you the moon, it's still not going to be the version that exists in my head, but it's surprisingly moving in that direction, so cautious optimism? Couldn't hurt. One related issue, though, is, and again, it's the character doesn't appear in this specific episode, or they're below the cutoff, because the rankings go up to like 150. Admittedly, after 100, they're just spear carriers, but this is only the 30 or so people at the top of the list, skipping over 20 who just weren't in this episode. We don't see Lord Unwyd peak in this listing. And I'm worried about that, but on the other hand, he might just not be in this episode. It might just be checking in on Daeron for all of 2 minutes, because I don't think he'll be in episode 4 that much. I think Honeywine is the episode or 2 before this. Unwyd Peake is a lot more important of a character than Bold John Roxton. Roxton is a landed knight who's, their attack dog, versus Peake is a commander. He's a lord of one of the major vassal houses of the Reach. That he'd be one of the top, if you have, obviously condensed for TV, here's the top commanders of the Reach army, and you have like 3 guys, one of them would be Peake. Heck, if you cut it down to 1, it would be Peake, and here's my lieutenant who's, like when the Lannister army has the Leffords, we saw that in Season 2, his Lefford is, and here's my vassal I'm barking orders at. For the Reach, you'd have Unwyd Peake. Unwyd Peake is a smart military commander. He is a devious man, famed for his cunning as a fox-appointed Archmaester of Cunning at the Citadel. He goes on to be a major character and eventually becomes Hand of the King in a different prequel era, so I hope they're not condensing him with Roxton. And if you did condense the two, you'd name it Unwyd Peake rather than Roxton, so again, maybe Unwyd just isn't in this episode, because they're not in every episode. Like Game of Thrones, sometimes they'd have just 2 minutes checking in on Daenerys, and one of her side characters wouldn't be in it, but then they'd pop up again in the next one, so that's fine. Keep an eye out for that. But overall, the fact that they'd include Roxton leads me to think that we're going to meet Peake eventually, that this is expanding Daeron in the Reach far more than I ever thought they would. After we started panicking and thinking Daeron won't be in the show at all. So we'll see on that. Other half of this are the 4 new characters that are in Rhaenyra's storylines or associated with them to varying degrees. This isn't as specific. The one through line is their various kinds of guard. Because, the memory is fuzzy. I don't reread the book every week. At first I thought, these are all Queen's Guard for like 1 minute. And then I realized, no, the first one is a new Queen's Guard. The other ones are different kinds of guards. So let me walk you through that. The first one is we're getting a new member of Rhaenyra's Queen's Guard named Adrian Redfort. And again, at first when I saw that, my mind kind of blanked. In the 30 seconds, wait a minute, oh yeah, I remember that. I blanked for a minute and thought, Adrian Redfort, oh no, are they gender-swapping Jessamine Redfort and removing her from the Jane Eyre thing? No, this is a character from the book, it's separate from that. There's only 2 named Redforts in this prequel era, Jessamine Redfort and Adrian Redfort. It doesn't say how they're related. But at this point in the war, Rhaenyra's Queen's Guard consists of 1 man, Laurent Marbrand. Because originally she had 3, that there were 7 under Viserys, they split in half, 3 went over to her, but Eric Cargill died in the duel with his twin, and then Laurent Marbrand, got killed trying to claim a dragon, as in the book. So now they're down to 1 guy. After Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, I gave you all a spoiler warning, She tells Laurent Marbrand, who's the Lord Commander of her Queen's Guard of one person, find 6 other knights as replacements. So there's a couple of other knights that are quickly on the list of replacement Queen's Guard, one of which is Adrian Redford. So I'm surprised that they could have just left these as unnamed background Kingsguard number 2. It might not be that prominent. I mean, Rickard Thorne was in season 2. He had some speaking lines, played by Vincent Regan. He was a prominent actor, had some lines escorting the queens out of the food riot. So on that scale of a character, but named with speaking lines, oh, I'm Adrian Redford. They could have just left it blank. This seems to be they're expanding on it, though of course it's because a Queen's Guard would be in every Rhaenyra scene. There's this halo effect that Kingsguard tend to rank disproportionately high in the cast listing, like Laurent Marbrand is surprisingly high because you realize he's in almost every Rhaenyra scene. Like her council scene's just in the background because he's her guard who's meant to shadow her. This happens on both sides, like Aegon's drinking buddies also ranked proportionally high because when they became Kingsguard they were in the background all the time. Now, the second of these 4 various guard characters in Rhaenyra's different storylines, the second one is Torrhen Manderly. Like I said for a minute, I thought, fuzzy memory, oh, he was named to the Queen's Guard. He was not named to the Queen's Guard. He joins Rhaenyra's household guards in King's Landing without taking vows. The Game of Thrones TV show totally slighted the Manderlys and cut all of their major characters and subplots. They are really prominent in the books. The entire speech Lord Manderly gives, that's an insult. They cut all of that, to the point that a TV-only audience wouldn't really recognize the Manderlys by name. They pop up in 1 or 2 episodes. You'd think they're minor background characters compared to how prominent they are in the book, that they rule the North's only major city, White Harbor. It's the smallest of the 5 cities in Westeros, but it is a city. It's got the most wealth in the North. They rule White Harbor, but they're actually Andals who follow the faith of the Seven, because they fled the Reach 1,000 years ago as exiles, and the Starks, who are honorable, welcomed them in as vassals, and because of that, the Manderlys are fanatically loyal to them, that they took us in when we were exiles, and they built this city for them that actually brings in significant wealth to the North, or what wealth they have, from selling fish and seal skins, but it's a city. It's interesting when you see, well, what's a smaller city look like compared to King's Landing? In the Davos chapter where he goes to White Harbor, and it's a smaller version of it. That in the book, after Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, as a sign of his support, the current head of House Manderly sends his 2 sons to the city to join Rhaenyra there. Torrhen Manderly and Medric Manderly. Medric isn't listed here. Medric is actually the elder son, heir to White Harbor, and one of the finest knights in the North. Torrhen is described as fat but clever, which is a recurring trait for the Manderlys in the main novels, that people underestimate Lord Manderly because he's so rich, he's very fat, but he's actually very smart. Now, Torrhen Manderly is a reasonably prominent character because he goes on to become a relatively prominent character. He serves as hand of the king for a time. So, of course, the question is, we don't know how prominent he'll actually be in the TV show. Like, will they bother to... I'm hoping against hope they're actually going to use this as an excuse to put in all this exposition about the Manderlys, which we would have gotten in Season 2 if Jace had gone to White Harbor as he did in the book. Well, actually, I don't blame them for that. They replaced going to White Harbor with going to the Freys. And I get, for a TV audience that isn't familiar with the Manderlys, it was shorter and easier to have him go to the Freys. And actually to show that Jace is a good politician within time constraints, I was actually for that given time constraints, I'd prioritize Jace going to Winterfell and plowing snow, as they say. We wouldn't have extra time to go to White Harbor anyway, so I'm not blaming him for that. If they couldn't do Winterfell, they wouldn't do White Harbor. Couldn't really do Winterfell. But maybe they'll actually include some of that. I'm overcompensating here because going into Season 2... I was too optimistic and read into every leak, oh, this will be a major character, and then some of them only appeared for 5 minutes. So I'm trying to be more realistic here, but you never know. Maybe, and because even like a few lines, like Oscar Tully only had like 8 minutes of screen time, but they actually gave him a really good storyline and character development within those 8 minutes, so, it's hard to predict. A lot of my second video is going to be about this, how prominent is prominent, but, the book fans would be geeking out if there was all of 2 lines going, oh yes, the Manderlys rule White Harbor, but we're from the South, but we're loyal to the Starks. That would have us raving, even if it's, oh, that was just some minor thing. So I'm hoping this is an excuse to give exposition about the Manderlys. It could just be a glorified Easter egg that we're bothering to name people, but again, rankings, they're in the low 40s, and Oscar Tully was number 40 last year, so I'm optimistic. Cautiously optimistic that, if nothing else, he'll be there. I don't know if they'll explain who the Manderlys are. Maybe they're just introducing him this season, and if we get a spin-off show about the Regency or something, you never know. If Season 3 is really good again, it will be with all the action scenes. Torrhen becomes Hand of the King at one point, and I hope they're setting him up. And that's a line for, we're hedging our bets that if we get more time, we will round him out as a character in Season 4 or something, I don't know. One other thing I will speculate on is, I think that they're going to condense Torrhen Manderly with his brother Medric. Nor would I fault them for that. I understand for needs of adaptation, there's these 2 brothers, you'd really want to condense them into one character. Heck, that's what they did with Oscar Tully, that in the book, it's Kermit Tully and his younger brother Oscar, who's just a green boy. And they condensed them to one guy. I'm fine with that for purposes of that. This is an outline, as a historical outline of these events. It's not a full novel. They'd have to go with that. So, if in the book version, Medric is the older brother who's this knight and warrior, and the younger brother Torrhen is the fat guy who's not really martial, but he's very smart and clever and an astute politician, they're probably going to condense those into one character who's a knight who's also an astute politician or something. I mean, again, spoilers, Medric dies in a plague a few years after the war ends and doesn't go on to do that much. So if a character dies like that, it makes sense to condense them into one character, but this ties back into how much of the Manderlys will we see? Will this just be a glorified named extra, or will they actually be giving exposition about this guy and the Manderlys, or seeding it to then reveal in Season 4? We don't know. It's fun to speculate, and I look forward to the comments section. Third guard character in Rhaenyra's various storylines is Luther Largent, the current commander of the City Watch in King's Landing. In the books, a lot more of the Gold Cloaks are secretly still loyal to Daemon than the Greens ever realized. So when the dragons arrive to take the city, the Gold Cloaks mutiny en masse and throw 6 of the 7 city gates wide open for the Valyrian fleet. That's how they're able to take it with a skeleton force with minimal losses. That they just throw the gates open and, you guys are turncloaks. It was Daemon who gave us these gold cloaks, and they're gold no matter how you turn them. So it's good that we were waiting for that yes, Luther Largent is in. Again, will they include all of this stuff from the book? I don't know. But the mere fact that they're at least introducing him with a name is a step in the right direction. Fourth and last guard character, he's not really a guard at this point, is interesting though. And you have to read through this because of the glare, but other people are just, yes, we've all confirmed this is what the name is. Tom Tangletongue. So called due to his stutter. Actually, I had to look this up, that I always in my head remembered that Tom Tangletongue was a minor guard on Dragonstone. No, it just says he's a fisherman at this point. He becomes a guard later. That he's this fisherman who just happens to be on... There are small folk on Dragonstone. Game of Thrones never established that there's like 3 villages on it of fishermen. And on its own, this is about as significant as the casting for Alfred Broom or something. Oh, he's another named guard or person from Dragonstone. What casting Tom Tangletongue might hint at is that they are going to establish that Sunfire is still alive. Aegon's dragon. Because in the book, Tom Tangletongue, it says, he was listening in on these drunken Volantine sailors at the local inn, saying, oh, we saw these dragons fighting in midair. And everyone assumed it was this other dragon, but he paid attention, because even with his stutter, he can't talk very fast, but he listens more than he talks, that type of person. and he noticed they consistently said that one of the dragons had golden scales, which the one everyone assumed it wasn't. That everyone assumes Sunfire is dead for a while, but he managed to heal from his injuries, not perfectly, his wing arm set wrong, but he can fly again if ungracefully, and even a mangled but healed up dragon can be very dangerous as a tool of war. Now, we were all worried about this in Season 2, that they left it deliberately ambiguous. And we're worried about that when they choose something to deliberately choose to be like that, is it because you're worried you won't have screen time in Season 3? Or is it just that you're doing a fake out? And I think it was just a fake out, at least I'm hoping it was. That Kristen says, oh, Sunfire was taking a long time to die, so eventually I decided to just bring my army back to King's Landing. He never actually saw him die. And Aegon says, oh, my dragon is dead. He's been bedridden. He has no idea. That in the book, Sunfire surprisingly it mirrors his rider Aegon, that he manages to recover enough to get around again, and with a homing instinct, he finds Aegon, and having a dragon again, feeling this confidence of I'm a cripple, but I can fly a dragon and be powerful again. And they heal together. This is a major part of Aegon's story arc. So the guy who found out that Sunfire is still alive has been cast. That does not guarantee we're getting Sunfire at all. Step in the right direction. That this could be setting up, so I'm allowing myself to feel optimistic. Sorry I keep laughing, but things are falling into place, but I'm not the only one saying this, so don't take my word for it. We were already, the instant we saw the casting sheet, this was speculation among the fans, but now, because it lets you put in a article title, dead character might come back, which is technically true. News sites are running this now, like winteriscoming.net, Screen Rant for their own reasons, but latching onto Sunfire might still be alive. They're not shorting Aegon's storyline with that. Cautious optimism that they're setting all that up. So the specific 3 points that we learned in Part 1, just from the mere fact these names are out there. Point 1, there's a lot more characters in the Daeron Reach storyline than we thought, which is good, that they're really expanding it, or seem to be. 2, I doubt they'll be very prominent given time constraints, but bothering to name and cast new characters in Rhaenyra's storyline, like Torrhen Manderly or Luther Largent, is encouraging. It doesn't hurt. And third and last, Tom Tangleton casting indicates that they are going to reintroduce Sunfire, or we hope. But this is all just what we know objectively from the names. Follow me after the jump into Part 2, the second video. You can watch them out of order, where I go over, with a lot of context from Season 2, how significant is it if a character jumps 20 spots, like one or two of them did between Seasons 2 and 3, as we can see from this listing here. I'm also cautiously optimistic that certain characters who were slighted in Season 2 will get more screen time in Season 3 due to this change in cast ranking that we see here.